Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around it's going to be a bit of a double cast, but in this first one, it's a little bit of a short match, and I simply wanted to use it to demonstrate a little bit with the heroic chariots. I recently did a video explaining why I think heroic chariots are better than normal chariots, or normal chariot units, whether those be goblin wolf chariots, like the big units like goblin wolf chariots or tomb king chariots, or if they're the normal sort of 3 model chariots, or even the non-heroic chariots with lower weapon strength, such as, for example, black coaches, or I suppose to an extent steam tanks. And in theory, heroic chariots, due to their very high weapon strength and relatively low splash, kill a lot of models on the charge. So I decided to try it out in practice here, and this is against Dark Elves. And so this first match, there isn't much to say here really. The comp I brought, not necessarily the best comp, I don't know. I wanted to try it out. So we've got 4 units of Gore Herd, of course, to soak up enemy charges. Sisters of Slaughter are a huge problem for the Beastmen, and I figured, you know what, this is like the perfect testing ground, because the chariots could potentially counteract the power of Sisters really, really effectively. So what we did here was we brought a front line of Gore Herd, one of which is the Black Orange Ravagers. Our hero squad here is a Brave Shaman of the Wild, who's got the... He's got a few spells. He's got the Mantle of Gorak, he's got Devolve, he has Bestial Surge, as well as a Jagged Dagger. We do also have a Brave Shaman of Shadows, who actually doesn't have any spells. He simply has a Jagged Dagger, and Kazrak One Eye, who does have Apocalyptic Vision, as well as Scourge. So a 3-man Chariot Goon Squad looking to bust up some infantry. For the second line, we do have the Korok's Man Rippers, because of course you need some anti-large, alongside the Butchers of Kalkengard, who are essentially a secondary anti-large. People think you got to bring Minotaurs with great weapons. Personally, I'm not that big of a fan of them. I think Minotaurs with great weapons are so simple to shooting that it's not worth it. Out on the flanks, we do have 2 Centaurs, or 2 Centaur squads, one of which is Sons of Gorus with some Chaos Warhounds with poison, the other simply normal Centaurs with Chaos Warhounds with poison. For my opponent, he decided to go extra simplistic. 2 Harpies, 3 Dark Riders with repeated crossbows, and a front line entirely composed of Sisters of Slaughter, who I do believe will actually... They might outtrade Pestigors in a straight-up fight. They're a pretty ridiculous unit with that crazy melee defense and the poison and the physical resist. They're a pretty ludicrous unit, especially in extended combat. And they are backed here by a Supreme Sorceress of Death, who does have Purple Sun, Spirit Leech, Fate of Buna, as well as Soul Blight. She also does have the Azripal's Black Horror, as well as Arcane Conduit, and the Opal Amulet, I do believe it's called. I want to say that's what it is, the damage resistance. Regardless, you can see a few volleys going into my Korok's Man Rippers, already whittling them down by about 1,000 HP, which is definitely not what you want happening early game. These are a very valuable unit, and despite the fact that my opponent didn't bring large, they're still kind of an important anchor. But you can see immediately here, we're going to charge into this mob of Sisters of Slaughter, and you can see just how much damage has been done. We've already knocked them down by about 1,200 HP, and as we're kind of meandering through, you can see those kills are already adding up. These Sisters of Slaughter have lost about 15 models in just that charge from these heroic chariots, and now we turn around, we swing back, and we're just annihilating these Sisters. Look at how much damage is being done. Certainly there's some of it's being done by other shock units, but it's just a lot of damage going down. Elsewhere, we are trying to pressure back the kiting units. My opponent here dumping his Harpies into the fight, just trying to bog down my Warhounds, bog down my Centaurs, which is really, really annoying. But just look at this. 2 Sisters of Slaughter almost instantly routed, of course with a little help from the Terror, as well as from the Butchers, which is very nifty, but you can see already these guys are up to several kills. A Purple Son of Zerus is going to go down here and wipe out a lot of my troops as well as my opponent's troops, so I'm not entirely sure it was worth it. But we're on the rampage here. We're just on the prowl, farming these Sisters of Slaughter and just completely dumpstering them. You can see these guys down to 42 models and just getting run down with merciless precision by these chariots. And so we're basically just running amok. And my opponent doesn't really have the tools to stop me now. Elsewhere, certainly, he's doing a pretty good job trying to intercept my Centaurs. The nice thing is that the Centaurs are fast enough to outrun Harpies, so we're going to be able to get clear and continue pursuing these guys. Elsewhere, the Sons of Gorus are going to snag these Dark Riders, so we're kind of able to pressure them down, force them off. And one of our Warhounds will rally, which is really nice. And you can see just how much damage is being done. My opponent overextending here a little bit with the Sister of Slaughter, perhaps a little bit of a greedy play, or hoping to take advantage of his poison to run me down. Certainly doing it somewhat successfully, but it does mean he's a bit disrupted at this point. We're going to fast forward here a little bit. You can see we're going to mop up some troops, and we are going to do a nice little recharge. And this is actually going to be the first bit of magic we use this game, which is going to happen shortly. You can see we're charging in. We are going to drop a Devolve, which of course is monstrous against these troops, and in come our heroic chariots, just piling through and destroying these troops. And you can see they're all racking up a lot of kills. The Brave Shaman of the Wild here up to dozens of kills. Kazrak 40 over here, these guys are just doing really great. And my opponent at this point simply decides to GG out, deciding that really he doesn't stand much of a chance. But as you can see, we essentially wiped out 3 sister units to a man and almost wiped out 2. We really probably would have been able to win this fairly handily, I think. But you can see just how much damage, and you got to keep in mind, these are very valuable units. Every unit of Sisters of Slaughter costs 1,100 gold. they're not a cheap unit. Certainly they're a very powerful unit in this matchup. Certainly you could even spam them. I do think you'd want to bring some spears or some additional supplementary troops, but they're very expensive, and with this sort of bunker busting strat where we just overrun them and destroy them very quickly with some shock and awe from our chariots, we were able to easily swing a portion of the flank. And keep in mind, these chariots are pretty cheap. Kazrak costs about 1,700. The Brave Shaman of Shadows without anything is 700. You 780 if you throw on the Jagged Dagger. The Brave Shaman of the Wild, even with the dagger, even with all his spells and everything, he sat around 1,300 gold. So it wasn't too expensive an investment really to get such monstrous results. And I don't necessarily think that Kazrak's the way to go here. I think that perhaps it's smarter to just bring the 2 shamans to get the double chariots, and then drop Kazrak for the simple fact that you want to tank your lord. So I think Morgor might be a smarter pick here. But nonetheless, I do think this kind of demonstrated the point here. And we're going to hop onto a different match, which is a little more serious match, but I wanted to show you guys this to show those heroic chariots can have a huge impact, and they can just demolish units that you would otherwise consider tough to deal with. So this time around we are on the Lost Crater for a bit of ye old favorite, or definitely one of my favorite matchups, simply for the fact that I think it's a pretty skewed matchup, but it's fun to try to make it work, and that is High Elves against Brettonia. And I've certainly demonstrated this matchup a few times now, and I do apologize if it's a little repetitive, but I am trying a bit of a different composition this time. We have ditched any Swordmasters, any pretense at elite infantry. I've simply gone with a bunch of Spearmen, Signs of Mathlon anchoring things in the center, backed by some Archers for my infantry contingent. Otherwise, the core is much the same as usual. Teclis with his almost all of his spells except Chain Lightning, as well as the Scroll of Hoeth, which is an incredibly powerful ability here. One of the cool things, or maybe not cool, but one of the tough things to deal with is Fey Enchantress and her ability to heal and drop nukes and all that sort of stuff. Scroll of Hoeth buys you time to wipe out a unit if you need to wipe one out, before the Fey Enchantress can get all of her spells off. We do also have the Flaming Sword of Ruin, Net of Mintok, Enfeebling Foe, Flock of Doom, as well as Regrowth. Single Unit of Dragon Princes over there, as well as the Unit of Dragon Princes over there, do provide us with some solid general purpose cavalry. We do have 2 nobles, as well as the Fireborn for a bit of an anti-large core.
It is done.
On the flank, my opponent decided, up opposite, my opponent decided to go with a rather wide build. 2 Blessed Field Trebuchets, which I personally do not think are that great of a choice. They're very expensive for not much better stats, as far as I'm aware. But he does have 2 Blessed Field Trebuchets and a lot of infantry, so he's got a staggered out formation here of peasant mobs. He does have some men-at-arms with shields, as well as providing a secondary line, and then some foot squires to really anchor things. In the back, some Spearmen at Arms, unshielded variant, are providing some further support. And in fact, this is a full 20 stack. 3 Peasant Bowmen with Pox arrows, which I personally think is a mistake. As some other YouTubers point out, you're better off bringing, say, 1 unit of Pox and then making the rest fire arrows or normal arrows. It's cheaper, or well, potentially cheaper if you decide to go with normal arrows, and you don't need poison. Doesn't stack. You only get 1 charge of it, so might as well not have bother. A Knights of the Lionhearted here is basically the budget Grail Knights sitting around on this flank. And then on the other end, we do have a real unit of Grail Knights. But for my opponent's interesting staying power choice here, he does have 2 Paladins, as well as the Fey Enchantress with Regrowth and Earthblood, as well as her usual stuff. There was surprisingly no Chalice of Potions, so we can't expect a bombardment. But it's pretty obvious my opponent was expecting a more infantry-centric build. And fortunately, I think this build, we don't offer him too many good targets. So we are going to fast forward here in the early game, where there isn't much to say. I need to push forward. This is Lost Crater, which is, in my opinion, one of the worst maps in this game. Generally, I'm very critical of maps. I know some maps I outright call garbage, and I do believe this is one of them. If there's a bad map in this game, I think this is an example of one. Because it's just too open, and you're essentially forced to start very far away. But regardless, you can see my opponent here really whittling down Signs of Mathlon. Definitely some good play there, because the Dragon Princes would be a difficult target. But over here, we are going to get a nice meaty net on these Grail Knights, and then immediately pile in from behind with our blob of Knights. Now, big mistake here is that what I make is that I do not immediately drop, well, 2 things. I make 2 mistakes here. The first mistake is that rather than dropping an immediate Flaming Sword of Ruin, I decide to be cheap and hesitate. This is not something you should do, and it comes to bite me in the rear in this match. Second of all, I did not drop my Scroll of Hoeth on the Fey Enchantress, which is a second mistake. I could have easily denied her regrowth. So you can see that is misplay on my part. The Scroll of Hoeth came in too late. Don't do that, and I'm paying for it here. My opponent is able to extricate his Grail Knights, getting huge value. Now elsewhere, you can see we are pushing forward, getting our spears in. Over here on the flank, we've got a free engagement between Knights of the Lionhearted and the Dragon Princes. And although it will be a bit of a tough fight, Knights of the Lionhearted are definitely no pushovers. They are, in fact, comparable stat-wise. If we do a quick comparison, 38, 36, 37. To the Grail Knights, I do believe it's 38 baseline, because they're being poisoned by their friends right now. But 38, 30, they've actually got better melee defense than the Grail Knights. They don't have the physical resist, and they might not have as much of a bonus versus large. It's 12 compared to, is it 12 on these guys as well? 10. So, but in general, they're pretty comparable. But you can see, because we got the charge off over here, we are going to be able to slaughter these nice little Lionheart and win out. Here, however, because I did not use the Flames for Ruin, I'm being bitten in the rear so very badly, and this is a huge misplay on my part, and I'm paying for it. I really should have used it, and I would have found myself in a much better position. So these Grail Knights are just surviving where they really shouldn't have. They should have been gone, and this is a lesson, essentially. Don't make sure to use your abilities when they're ready. So you can see my opponent is actually going to win out against the Fireborn, despite my best efforts to help them through growth, because of course the Grail Knights bypass their physical resist. Elsewhere, however, we are able to rout one of the Paladins. We're going to be able to force him off the map edge, because we are pretty close. Over here, my opponent is kind of moving the Fan Enchantress around, trying to help deal with these Dragon Princes, but we were able to push the Dragon Princes into the back line, get them into the Peasant Bows, and start a full rout. So we've slaughtered this Blessed Field Trebuchet, we've slaughtered those Peasant Bows, and the front line fight, although the Trebs are certainly doing some good work, we have managed to get rid of those Knights. We're going to be able to start shooting down this Blessed Field Trebuchet, and we're bogging down all this infantry. My opponent here not really microing. I think most of our micro, for both of us, was over on this flank. So because of that, neither of us was really too focused here, but my army, because it's a smaller force, essentially all it has to do is hold, and they don't really have to do anything fancy. For my opponent, though, he really needed to be getting envelopments here and trying to collapse my spears, get rid of them, and get at my archers. So the archers, you can see, are going to whittle down this Blessed Field Trebuchet pretty efficiently. Elsewhere here, you can see the Grail Knights just jabbing away at the Dragon Princes, definitely doing immense damage. Once again, just horrible play on my part there. There's no real excuse for why this went so badly. We are going to lose the Fireborn here. They are actually going to rout, which is a bit of a disaster. Though fortunately the Grail Knights are getting beaten down. But once again, another misplay here. Techless overextending, getting beaten down by the Fan Enchantress. And I'm not paying attention. My mind is elsewhere. I'm paying attention elsewhere. You can see I'm trying to get the nobles into the fight, and I was looking over here, getting my archers to attack the Blessed Field Trebuchet. And while that is happening, Techless is getting massacred here in the pits, and my opponent is very heavily focusing him, and I'm going to lose Techless here. I had pushed him to Troy. I could have easily saved him, but it's not going to happen. Techless, but the first thing I would move to go cast a spell. Techless is routing, and shortly thereafter, Techless is going to be dead. So a bit of a disaster. And suddenly things, the balance of power suddenly shifts into the middle, where I had started this pretty comfortably. We're suddenly in a bit of a grim spot. Now, fortunately, I do still have these very two strong nobles. We're going to be able to get them in on the Paladin, start beating the snot out of him. And the backline is essentially compromised. My opponent's essentially forgotten about this Trebuchet. These Peasant Bows with Pox Arrows are not going to bother anyone for much longer. And this Paladin is going to get dragged from the muck by the two very angry nobles, because nobles are just absolute kings of anti-large dueling. With the benefit of their bonus versus large, they've got a 35 bonus versus large, which puts them up to almost 80. That's 79 melee attack against large. Against the Paladin's pitiful 40 melee defense, they're going to absolutely slaughter him. And plus, they've got AP where he does not, so really some bad stuff for him. But at the same time, my opponent, able to get his Grail Knights here. He still has 9 models. I haven't been able to assassinate them. He's actually going to slaughter the rest of the Fireborn here, down to the last model, fighting to the last man. The Heil's definitely doing the country proud, but just not able to cut the mustard. However, the Fan Enchantress here being forced off, despite trying their best to make use of that Mortis Aura. And we are going to get a nice meaty charge here on the Grail Knights, and we are finally going to be able to wrap this unit up. That's been a thorn in my side for this entire game. Elsewhere, you can see the Spearmen doing their best to hold, but at this point my opponent has finally caught on to the fact that he was badly engaged, and he is going to start shifting his infantry in. And I actually had some reserve Spearmen who had been chasing these peasant mobs off the field, who are now able to push in and re-engage. And they're on fairly good HP, so we're going to be able to hold. You can see these Foot Squires being chipped down. Foot Squires are actually a pretty good target, especially when they're very tired, because their armor becomes very low. And their armor's not that great to begin with. So for the bows here, we're going to get some good value. We're going to be able to whittle these guys down. That said, my opponent still does have the Fan Enchantress, an unknown amount of Winds of Magic, and he still does have a lot of infantry. You can see if we look at the balance of power here, although it looks rather favorable to me, my opponent does outnumber me nearly 3 to 1. So what we are going to do here is we're going to use our archers to try to whittle down the Fan Enchantress. My opponent is going to try to juke a little bit, trying to dodge back and forth, but it's not going to cut the mustard. We are going to focus her down very heavily here, just smashing into her. And although she will get into the fight here and try to Mortis Engine me down, it's not going to be enough, because the noble is in hot pursuit. He's coming in hot on her tail, and the archers here are going to reposition and start firing away. And I put them on guard mode to make sure they keep firing. I don't want these dumb peasants wasting my time. And the Fan Enchantress does get flung from her horse there, going down in the dust there. And what is that pose? She's got like an arrow in the back of her head. It just looks ridiculous. But elsewhere, you can see we'll be able to rout out these peasant mobs, and suddenly the balance of power is decisively swinging into my favor. So over here, the Dragon Prince is moving in for the charge, coming in against these filthy peasants who are sitting here swinging their hammers at the edge of the map as these very angry knights come slamming into their back. And that wasn't quite as dramatic as I would have hoped, but we're going to run these poor guys down, and these peasants really don't stand a chance. So with that out of the way, my opponent is essentially reduced to this pocket of infantry. But with no Fan Enchantress, his leadership is very low. You can see, and many of these units are very whittled down. And the thing is, if we can start breaking individual units off, such as these units that are overextending here, we can suddenly hopefully snowball this into a win. So you can see here we are going to disengage with our Dragon Princes. We're going to come in from the flank. We dive our Noble into the Men-at-Arms to pin them in place. We're going to bypass these infantry. And suddenly we're going to start collapsing the Men-at-Arms. You can see they're very low on morale already. They're going to take a rear charge here, a meaty connection from the Dragon Princes. There's still 22 models. These guys, despite being very badly beaten up, are actually still relatively healthy in model count. And so we're going to be able to absolutely pulverize these Men-at-Arms, force an immediate rout. The second unit of Men-at-Arms is not going to last much longer as their friends start routing, because all these units are expendable, which means they are still all affecting each other, except for the Foot Squires who are not. So these two Men-at-Arms are suddenly off the map. And the archers are going to keep pounding away at the Foot Squires because they are really the biggest threat at this point, the only unit with AP. But we're going to fast forward a little bit here. You can see I'm using my nobles. I'm throwing them into the fray here, knowing I can bog these troops down. These guys are both still have their martial prowess, so they still have that 60 melee defense. And we're going to be able to bog these guys down forever. The spearmen at arms don't even have shields, so archers are going to be able to whittle them down. And now we're going to start pulling our spears in. Our knights are going to start swinging around. And fast forwarding a little bit, we are going to get a final bit of a charge here before my opponent. His army simply breaks, and you can see the Dragon Princes are just piling in into the side. A bit of a staggered charge with 2 units, and we are going to be able to drag these hideous wretches down into the muck. So, final win for the High Elves. Now, in retrospect, you can see some units here performed incredibly well, others not so much. Fireborn and Techless, the two biggest problems here were that I did not use Techless correctly, and I did not use the Fireborn correctly. Or, more importantly, I didn't support the Fireborn correctly. I was certainly able to beat out my opponent's hero squad very, very efficiently, and that was a godsend. But the fact that I engaged those Grail Knights very badly with my Fireborn and then didn't provide the support, I didn't drop a Flaming Sword of Ruin to bypass that physical resist, meant those Grail Knights tanked way better than they should have, ended up slaughtering my Fireborn, and then were able to hold far longer and really disrupt my operations on that flank of the map. I then lost Techless, which hurt me a huge amount because I still had a lot of Winds of Magic. I could have still casted a lot of spells. I could have much more easily broken those blobs up had I had access to my spell power. Otherwise, the build performed as I expected. The Nobles did rather well. The Spearmen did their job. The Dragon Princes, as you can see, raked in tons of kills, doing a stellar work against this infantry crap lineup. The infantry are very bad against Dragon Princes, and that's our low-end infantry like this. They're basically the cannon fodder that Dragon Princes can feast upon. So, definitely that was beneficial for me. Definitely well played to my opponent, making the best of what I think was not that good of a situation for him. Definitely bringing things down to the wire. And yeah, so good game to Ivar here, or Ivar. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, anything like that, as usual, don't hesitate to ask. I will do my best to respond as soon as I am able. As usual, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.